All right, let's go ahead and start. I get impatient, sorry for, well, I don't need to apologize to the people who are listening. My name is Gary Barnes. I am a clinical social worker. You can see all my cool credentials on the first slide. I primarily see clients all day long. I have a long history of working in the employee assistance program field, doing a lot of training, work with small groups, um, dealing directly with work groups in conflict and having problems. I've done training on sexual harassment and related topics, as well as communication and assertiveness. So we are going to spend about 50 minutes. So I'll try to, I'm watching the clock, I'll try to stop at about 10 to 1 so that we can begin to answer questions that have come up for you. This is a mighty topic, as you might imagine. There's a lot of angles, a lot of ways we could talk about it. So the way I chose to address the topic today was to try to give you a little bit of a lot of information. So a lot of different concepts, a little bit of those, and hopefully it will be interesting to you, and you will hook on to something or several somethings that you like that you will want to follow up on your own. That's sort of the way I'm viewing this. So I hope that works for you. All right, let's go to the next slide if I can make it do that. Uh-oh, there we go. Okay, so we're starting with a question. This is a polling question. So we have a few of these laced into the presentation, both to keep you interested and it's kind of fun, I think, to do. It lets us know that people are with us and paying attention. So here, this is the first question, and the poll is now open. And let's see, okay. And I can see the answers coming in. And how long does it stay open, Brenda?
Oh, we usually just give it a minute.
Okay.
So most people have voted. So it looks like 81% of people have voted.
Okay. Everybody make sure you cast your vote. Your vote might make the difference. I feel like I'm supposed to say that. I think somebody just changed their answer. Oh, there, yeah. Because they go down. Some of the numbers go down and then back up.
Yeah.
Okay, should we stop it now?
Yeah, let's stop it.
Okay, I know I said you could read the answers, but I can read them if you don't mind.
Okay, go right ahead.
So 6% said 1, I don't always show respect to others and would like to. 46% said it's hard for me to be assertive with my coworkers. 21% said both of the above, and 27% said neither of the above. So the neither of the above group, the 27%, I would love to have you here to help me do this training, because there may be things that you know about assertiveness and respect that I don't know. Or it could be that not for you, not for the 27% who answered 4, but for some of us, you know, we're not always aware of the issues that we might have. I believe that we sometimes show disrespect and we don't even necessarily know that we're doing it. But anyway, for 46% of you, it's hard to be assertive, and for 21%, both of the above. Really not surprising answers. I think assertiveness is a challenge across the board for most of us. We don't like conflict, and we tend to undersell ourselves. Okay. Next slide. So I'm not going to spend much time on this. Brenda, everybody gets a copy of this training, right?
We can send it out to everyone. Yes.
Okay, okay. So I would encourage you to take more time with this on your own. But this came with the training. So I was given a training and I doctored it all up. But this slide was one of the slides in the training. So I left it in. And there are, just to show you, oh, sorry. Can I go back? There are 3 of them. So these are the things. So this is a self-test on respect in the workplace. And these are some items, and you can answer it and then score it to determine whether you think you are feeling respected in your workplace. So these are the items. Take time to ask how do your coworkers take time to ask how you're feeling and doing? Do they listen and try to understand my viewpoint? Help me when I ask for assistance. Let me finish talking without interrupting. Show interest in my opinions and ideas, etc. You can see the now the first thing that I thought was interesting when I opened this is a self-test, meaning you're supposed to rate how you feel your coworkers are doing with you. I thought that was interesting because I'd also like to know how you think you're doing with your coworkers. So I'd like to see some of you take this test in a very honest way and ask yourself, how am I doing? Do I take the time to ask others how they are feeling and doing? Because at the end of the day, and you might imagine hearing this from a counselor, you can only control yourself and your own behavior. Okay, so the training today we're going to try to provide some useful information and skill building on these things. The elements of a respectful, open, and supportive workplace, how to be more successful building respect and avoiding traps, constructive ways to think about and resolve conflict, and how to use communication to develop positive, effective work relationships. And you might say, wait a second, where the heck is assertiveness? That was part of the training. You're ripping me off here. Well, I decided that these are the items that will also contribute to the capacity for us to be more assertive. I don't think assertiveness comes out of thin air, and I don't think that it comes just from learning skills. Like if you say these things, you'll be able to be more assertive. Instead, I think it's part the climate. And anyway, you'll see where I'm going here. So the impact of respect in the workplace. This may be obvious, but these are absolutely true things. So this is where we try to sell you on the importance of respect. A work environment that is respectful is correlated with higher morale, reduced turnover, fewer workers' comp claims, less downtime devoted to politics, greater teamwork, reduced absenteeism, higher productivity, more initiative and creativity, a better reputation within the business community and among customers, as well as an easier recruitment of talented employees, increased innovation from acceptance and valuing of individual differences. Oh, I thought there was, sorry. Okay, that's it. Yeah. So we want to do this, right? All right, so how do we define respect? I went to dictionary.com and the Oxford Dictionary. Esteem for or sense of the worth or excellence of a person, and you can see the examples there. I have great respect for her judgment. Or a second might be a deference to a right, privileged position, or someone or something considered to have certain rights or privileges. So respect for someone's rights. And then the third definition that I got from there that I thought was appropriate to our training, due regard for the feelings, wishes, or rights of others. But because we live in the internet age, let's go with the Urban Dictionary definition, which means, and I think in the Urban Dictionary, this is just you ask people what respect means and people write in what they think it means. And I loved this. I thought this was perfect. Valuing each other's points of view. This was one person who said this. It means being open to being wrong. It means accepting people as they are. It means not dumping on someone because you're having a bad day. It means being polite and kind always, because being kind to people is not negotiable. It means not dissing people because they're different to you. It means not gossiping about people or spreading lies. I just think, I could almost end the training right now on or at least the respect part. That if you can, do those things, I think that's a great definition of respect myself. And then there's a second definition. We're going to get into this a little later, the golden rule, to treat people in the manner in which you expect to be treated, to show consideration of another person's feelings and interests, show consideration for their feelings and interests, and an attitude that demonstrates value. So we generally know what disrespect is. These are some examples. Some of these I would associate with bullying or what we would call a hostile workplace. But so disrespect can be more overt, like glaring, I think would be pretty overt, treating someone in a rude, disrespectful manner. But some are more subtle, like not talking to people, not giving feedback, not giving praise, not expressing yourself. So respect requires more effort than disrespect. I think that's a rule that we could all follow. And I start with this quote, which I got from Brene Brown, which I'm sure who I'm sure some of you know and have read her books or seen her TED Talk. And I loved that she said, "It's very easy to be mean." And it's a very simple statement, but especially today with the advent of social media, texting, other non-face-to-face options you have for letting people know your negative opinion about them or about something that they did. And so I think disrespect is much more plentiful and it's more of a norm than we would like it to be. So the opposite, being respectful, requires being intentional, meaning not acting on your emotions, acting in a way like the definition from the Urban Dictionary, acting in ways that you know in your heart are ways of showing respect. But respect also requires self-control, which is related to intention. And then it also involves vulnerability because, when you're being high and mighty and sure of yourself, because you're right and the other person's wrong, or you know everything and they don't know very much, that's the opposite of vulnerability. So vulnerability is being able to acknowledge that I don't know everything, and there are things that you know, and I'll defer to you. I may even give power over to you sometimes in an act of trust. So I think sometimes we're disrespectful because we fear losing control or being vulnerable. So these are related topics. I said this at the beginning. This is a very rich and diverse topic. I have done trainings that we call creating a respectful workplace, in which really it's really harassment and diversity training. So these are clearly related issues to respect. Harassment, diversity, how we deal with conflict, trust and team building, and assertiveness. So assertiveness is related to respect. And then workplace violence even, because violence exists on a continuum, and the more disrespect there is in a workplace, the more violent type behavior is tolerated. Okay, so here's another polling question for you. And this is a therapist polling question, meaning there's no one single correct answer. But I'd like to see what you have to say. Which of these is the most important in assuring respect in the workplace? So go ahead and log in and give your answers, and you only get to pick one, which is going to frustrate some of you. But what's the most important, do you think? Don't take a lot of time to think about it. Okay, how are we doing, Brenda?
It looks like we're at 77, 78%, 80%.
Okay.
A pretty good idea here of where this one's going. I'll just go ahead and close it.
Okay, yeah. So Brenda and I can see that the answers are 50% of you said trust and safety, 35% said the ability to talk about conflicts, 14% said clear and enforced rules about respect, and 12% said acts of kindness. So as I said in my introduction to the question, there's no single right answer here. All four of these things are important in creating a respectful workplace. My question was, what's the most important? And I would agree with the 50% of you that trust and safety are the most important thing in assuring a respectful workplace. So then the question becomes, how do we create an atmosphere of trust and safety? And ironically, if I'm using ironically in the correct way, the other three things on this list are examples of how you help create an atmosphere of trust and safety. Certainly how we deal with conflict is related to trust, and clear and enforced rules about respect are probably, I would say they are, but I'm going to leave a little wiggle room, probably necessary to create a climate of trust and safety. And then acts of kindness help create a positive perspective in the workplace that moves us further away from disrespect and more in the direction of trust and safety. So trust and safety are challenging concepts in their own right. And maybe we'll get some answers to this today in terms of how to create that. So bullying and harassment, just I felt like I needed to say this. They're extensions of disrespect, and they create a climate of fear and a lack of safety. So they are the opposite of what 50% of you said is necessary to create a climate of respect. So if these things are going on in your workplace and are not being addressed, then having a culture of respect is going to be practically impossible. Also, just as a note, they are against the law. We had a training called It Isn't Just About Sex Anymore, because the law addresses harassment and discrimination in a lot of different areas, of which sexual harassment is only one of them. And so I just put seek assistance from HR if this is going on. I understand that some of you in the audience may not even have an HR department. There are places you can go outside of the organization. but if you have a human resources department, it's better to start internally. You can always, depending on circumstances, sometimes your supervisor or manager is the appropriate person to talk to, sometimes human resources, and sometimes you have to go outside of the organization for support and assistance. That's all I'm going to say about that, I think. So, respectful behavior. Here are some ways, just in case you can't think of any, ways that respect can be conveyed. Statements that affirm, compliment, and value others. Showing common courtesy. Thank you for leaving me that message. Please hold my calls. I call this the Chip and Dale approach. If you remember the two, I think they were chipmunks. Were they chipmunks or whatever they were? The cartoon characters, Warner Brothers, and they're always going after you, no, after you, no, I insist. That actually is not a bad way to behave. Obviously, they do it in the cartoon in a comically extended way, but that a calmer version of that is not a bad way to be. Including and drawing others in, like, I'd really like your feedback on this. What do you think about this idea? Can you help me with this decision? I'm working on this project. I'd like your help in this particular area. People like to be included and they feel respected when you include them. And then this idea of active listening, easy to talk about. This is a true statement. When I have a cold that leads to me having a sore throat and not being able to talk, being hoarse, I am always humbled during my counseling sessions at how much I want to say. And I'm a counselor. I'm supposed to be good at listening. And in counseling sessions, if I don't have a voice, it's hard for me. I notice that my normal way, my normal pace is to talk a lot more. And like I said, it's humbling. Even I, as a trained professional, would like to be much better at listening and not interrupting and letting people finish what they're trying to say. So demonstrating sensibility to differences in gender, race, etc. Returning phone calls promptly, giving persons ideas or opinions, giving their opinions or ideas thoughtful consideration, being really careful when you're critiquing, taking feedback, being attentive and participating in meetings, meaning, putting away your device, leave your device at your desk, don't bring it to a meeting, even if everybody else is doing it. Greeting and acknowledging coworkers, taking time to apologize afterward, and giving time and attention to someone who seems to need it. And just on that last one, giving time and attention to someone who needs it, we're all busy. And so that becomes not a priority for us. We're busy with our list of tasks that we have to accomplish. But if you're going to create respect and get yourself in a position where you can have assertive conversations, really all of those things take time. The human part, the relational part of work takes time, and that stinks. We don't have time. But it requires it. So you go and figure that out and report back to me. So managing difference is required for respect because that we are all different. And this shows up in the workplace, this shows up at home, this shows up everywhere. If we're the same, we're less likely to have, we're more likely to get along in general. Although someone said to me this week, it really cracked me up. That if I'm annoyed with somebody, it's either because they have something I want or they're too much like me. And I think there's some truth to that. But anyway, on the difference idea, respecting a coworker is more challenging when we have a different background, like race, ethnicity, gender, economic class. When we have conflict, like role conflict, a conflict of goals or values, or just a miscommunication. And when we are focused on task over relationship. And respecting a coworker is harder when we're not in a good place, when we're stressed, etc. This is my little mathematical formula here. Stress plus conflict plus history can lead to harassment and, people feeling disrespected and really upset. So stress levels vary depending on personal triggers or hot buttons, a person's vulnerability, meaning personal issues that affect emotional strengths, and their beliefs and values. So here you go. Here's my little map. So where these three things meet is how much of a reaction you're going to get in a situation. So, and this is a diversity example. I have a nephew who's, I think he's 6'8". So physical appearance is one aspect of this. So you make a comment that you think is really clever, like, how tall are you? Or how is the air up there? And, so that's the trigger event. And, you're not going to get arrested for that comment. But his vulnerability is going to be increased because he's heard those same comments 500,000 times over his lifetime. And so, your comment on that is bumping against his history of hearing that comment and makes him feel like he's being viewed for his physical appearance. So your trigger event is not that big, but his vulnerability is higher. And then the question is, what's his belief and values? Does he think, that he doesn't treat people like that, and he thinks that you're really, an idiot for being like that? So you could get a really strong reaction to a simple comment like that, or you could get not such a strong comment. So that's what happens in the workplace. Sometimes it happens at home too, right? You get a very strong reaction to something that on the face of it didn't seem that big. And these are things that we don't know. When you come to work every day, you're not seeing a meter on everybody's chest of how they're doing in each of these areas. And so you get caught off guard. Let's talk about the golden rule. How can you talk about respect without talking about this? Essentially, I think I learned it in church as do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. This is Wikipedia. One should treat others as one would like others to treat oneself. That's the positive. One should not treat others in ways that one would not like to be treated. And what you wish upon others, you wish upon yourself. I didn't know about that one, but that makes sense as well. And I think these are, I think it's a good, it certainly gets us a long way toward respect. But I add this other statement, maybe for the workplace, we should also have a maxim to do unto others as they would have us do unto them. In other words, because we have so much diversity and different values, sometimes the problem is that our values are not the same, and we act as if everyone thinks like us, and that gets us in trouble. So not only do you want to act in a way that you wouldn't want others to treat you. And I think that really helps cut out a lot of disrespect. You wouldn't want people putting you down or yelling at you or other things like that. But also not doing unto others, considering how they want you to be, which could come up in a variety of ways. For those of you who like concreteness, we came up with the speed limit rule. So in Oregon, I know not all of you are in Oregon, the speed limit on the highway is usually 65. And in Oregon, again, I think all of us have figured out that somewhere, if I could talk to you all, I would ask you, how fast can you go without getting a ticket? And you would say, most of you would say 70, 72 maybe. And so you can think about respect as a degree of risk. If the norm is 65, how much risk are you willing to take in the workplace before you're going to upset somebody, maybe get yourself in trouble? And unlike driving on the highway, I think, well, no, maybe it is like driving on the highway. I think, going 65 makes a lot of sense in the workplace, even if you don't get caught or get away with it, or somebody isn't offended by something that you say. So let's give some examples here. Now, again, if I could talk to you and you could give feedback, we could go through some of these. But these are examples of things that you could do in the workplace, and you could say, like, how much risk are you taking by talking about these things? So, for example, compliments about job performance. I think there's very little risk that somebody's going to be offended by that. I think if you take something like internet pornography, bringing sexually suggestive photos or email to work, now you're at about as fast as your vehicle can go. You're taking about the most risk. So everywhere in between on this list. So I thought you might rate each one of these. I thought I would rate these with you. So rate these in your mind. 5 is high risk, 1 is low risk. Complaining to coworkers about a negative event that happened with another coworker. So what's the risk of that creating disrespect? I would say, it depends, but certainly at least 3. Remember, we all voted, not all of us, but most of us voted that safety and trust are required for a respectful workplace. And if you're complaining about someone else to a coworker, you're helping to establish an environment where there's a lack of trust. And we all do it. The only reason I didn't say that it was higher is that sometimes if you're having a reaction to a coworker, you need to confidentially talk to someone else in order to get your head on straight and figure out how to deal with it. And I'm okay with that. But more likely, we do it in a way that is not healthy and not helpful. Okay, number 2, telling a joke or story with sexual content when you think no one else can hear. I would say this is, again, relatively risky. Just don't do it at work because, it's like cussing. If you start behaving in that way at work, it becomes a habit, and then it leaks out in ways and in places where it shouldn't. So I would say just don't do it. Going straight to your desk without saying hi to a coworker. I hear this a lot when employees come in to see me because they're having conflict with coworkers, and they say, well, I'm just ignoring them because that's the best way that I can avoid causing trouble. And in fact, ignoring people is one of the fastest ways to get in trouble because ignoring people is unnatural and it's making a statement. If you really want to avoid conflict with coworkers, just be fake nice. Say hi to people and, try to be more normal. I'm not necessarily advocating that, but being silent sends a very strong message. And then this last one, about you haven't agreed to go out with me before. I hope you recognize this as potentially sexual harassment, because if someone has said no to you before, and you're asking them again, you're persisting and you've really elevated the level of risk of making them feel unsafe. Respect is an internal thing. Your capacity to really see the other person for their value, background, strengths, and struggles. And then the story you tell inside your head is the most important aspect of how you respond. So respect is an internal thing. Now this, I'm already starting to talk about assertiveness here. This is my best slide on assertiveness. When you have a conflict, there are two people. Brenda, can people see my little mouse?
I can see your little mouse, so I assume other people can too.
Okay. Well, so the person on the left is me, and the person on the right is the other person. So this is when you have conflict, and this is where assertiveness would be considered to be important. So this is the path to action. First thing that happens is something happens. There's some event. You see or hear something with a coworker, or they see or hear something that you did. And then you tell a story in your head about what happened. That person didn't say hi to me today. They must be mad at me. I had a person earlier this week who said, yeah, she slammed, so I gave her her keys, and then she slammed her clipboard down on the counter. She perceived that as a hostile act. So the story she was telling in her head was that person, not only wasn't grateful for me giving her her keys, but then slammed her clipboard down in a way that let me know that she was angry at me. Well, we don't know if she was angry at you or not, but that's the story that you're telling in your head. And so that leads to the feelings that you have and then to the actions that you take. So in this model, the place where we want to focus is right here. The story that you tell about what happened. So maybe that person slammed down the clipboard for a different reason. Maybe it wasn't about me. Maybe they're clumsy and it just dropped out of their hands. How do I know? I don't know because I haven't asked them. Normally this person's pretty nice. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe there's a lot going on in this person's life. So there's lots of things that you could say in your head that would calm down your feelings and make your actions be more appropriate. Because in assertiveness, we don't want to be angry, and we don't want to be mean. We don't want to, that's not assertiveness, that's aggressiveness. So this model comes from a book, which I'll quote at the end, Crucial Conversations. There's another book, Crucial Confrontations, which I actually like a little better in terms of its practicality. So I hope some of you will check this out. It's good stuff. Okay, another thing about respect is that it's contagious. If you smile, if you show acts of kindness and consideration, if you show appreciation, other people will act like that with you too. Respect and disrespect are both contagious, and there's studies about this. And at the end of my presentation, there is a link to a video that's 4.5 minutes long that I hope you'll watch that shows this phenomenon. It shows one person doing something to help someone else, and then in the next scene, the person that was just helped is helping somebody else, and then that person, and then it goes on in that sequence. It's really lovely. And I think it really does happen like that. So your acts of kindness, your actions of respect will make a difference in helping create that in others. So even if somebody else isn't being respectful, you can make a difference by being respectful. Okay, so here's another polling question. If you're really upset and feeling disrespected by a coworker, the best option is for you to ignore the person to avoid further conflict, confront the person about their behavior as unacceptable, calm down, and consider your options. All right. Are people answering this one pretty quickly? It looks like they are.
It looks like they are, yeah. So
Usually every time I do a training, I throw one softball at you just to see if you're paying attention. It looks like you are, or at least the people who are answering. Yeah,
shall we close it?
I guess so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So 92% of you said calm down and consider your options, and 4% of you said confront the person about their behavior is unacceptable or ignore the person. So I already commented on ignoring the person as being a sure way of getting of escalating conflict. Actually, it escalates it in people's minds. Now you can temporarily ignore, you can walk away, you can take a time out, as we call it, and those are encouraged. In fact, that's a high level conflict resolution skill, walking away, timeouts. When I said ignore the person, I didn't mean that. So if the 4% of you who answered it that way, I'm with you on that. Confronting the person about their behavior as unacceptable is sometimes what we call assertiveness. In fact, the person who I saw this week who said that her coworker slammed down the clipboard said to me, I am so mad at myself that I didn't confront her about that. In other words, I think it's a common misperception that being assertive means you have to stand up to the other person when they do something that hurts or offends you. In fact, I think assertiveness is a lot more complex and subtle. And I said that walking away is okay. And sometimes you don't have to deal with it. The slamming down the clipboard, she may or may not have to talk to this coworker about it. It depends on whether she can change the story in her head to make it a not important issue. But if she keeps having experiences like that with the coworker, then she will have to find a way to talk about it directly. So yes, calming down is your best option. We want you to consider your feelings, talk about your feelings, but we don't want you to try to talk to people when you're feeling your strongest feelings. That's when it's hardest, especially at work. All right, so I told you we'd get to assertiveness, and we're almost out of time. I apologize. I never know how long these trainings are going to go. So related to assertiveness are confidence, emotional intelligence, self-esteem, emotional regulation, and vulnerability. So confidence is your confidence in your ability to to deal directly with these kinds of things. And there's an excellent book, which I didn't include in the bibliography. If some of you are listening and can remember this, it's called The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. And he argues very practically that confidence is not something you start with. Confidence is something you develop through experience. So in other words, if you have to have a difficult conversation with a coworker, you can expect to not feel confident. Not feeling confident is not required for you to go and deal with it. The confidence will come once you make a plan and go and deal with it. Okay. So emotional intelligence has many components to it. Self-esteem is related to assertiveness because it's whether you believe that you deserve to be treated better or you deserve something. And sometimes a low self-esteem can lead to exploding because it's hard for you to ask for what you need. Emotional regulation is simply a fancy way of saying your ability to manage your emotional world and return yourself to a calm enough space that you can be productive. Absolutely required for assertiveness. And then vulnerability is related to assertiveness because if you're going to talk to somebody directly about a problem in a constructive way, you're making yourself vulnerable for them to not like you, for there to be more conflict, for them to not like you even more, for you to be unhappy. You're just vulnerable in so many ways. It's so much less risky to just do nothing, which is what most of us do most of the time. So assertive requires having confidence in your ability and your willingness to take risks and your belief in your right to want or need. Assertion is asking for what you want, stating your opinion, or expressing your feelings in direct and honest ways that show respect for yourself and the people you're communicating with. It's standing up for your rights without violating the rights of others, as opposed to aggression, which is standing up for your rights but expressing yourself in ways that violate the rights of others and don't show respect. So I think everybody knows this, right? And then there's submission, there's passive aggressive. I hear passive aggressive in my office. The two things I hear in my office when people are frustrated with other people is that the other person's passive aggressive or they're narcissistic. That's our two favorite labels that we like to put on other people. But in fact, passive aggressiveness does exist. It's an indirect way that we express our feelings. Now, if you're married or in a relationship with somebody and living together, if you're feeling a lot of negative things about something that person did, you're not going to be able to not communicate. I don't know if you understood that. There were a lot of negatives there. You're not going to be able to not communicate. You cannot not communicate because nonverbal communication is most of communication. So then you can act in passive aggressive ways without meaning to. This is a chart that we're not going to have time to go through. We're at 12:51 now. I'm going to go just a couple more minutes and hope that we can answer the most important questions. I really wanted to get to this, the emotional bank account. Probably a lot of you have heard of this. This is from the marriage literature. John Gottman is where I read it, and I think he's the creator of this concept. It's also been used in school settings, and it's been used in workplace. So the idea is that to have a relationship that you consider to be a healthy and productive one, you have a 5-to-1 ratio of positives to negatives, deposits and withdrawals. So positives are deposits to the emotional bank account, negatives are withdrawals. So if you have this 5-to-1 ratio, more deposits than withdrawals, then when you have conflict, you have less flooding, which is being emotionally upset. You get less upset during conflict, and your flooding, your being upset lasts less long. It's a shorter duration. So when you have this ratio, you have less emotional content, less negative emotional content, and you're in a better position to deal with the conflict. So deposits include things like appreciation. You know, we've covered a lot of this when I was talking about respect. Relevant information about turning toward versus turning away means just spending time with each other. This term we use in the workplace, small talk, turns out small talk is actually a good thing. It's important to developing and keeping a good emotional bank account with your coworkers. And then accepting people's influence. You know, when they say they think something, you're more likely to say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, or yeah, I like that, or yes, let's do that. That kind of thing. The general rule about the emotional bank account is we have more control over deposits than we have over withdrawals. So think about that for a minute. We have more control over deposits than we have over withdrawals. So you can come to work and say, today I'm going to smile at everybody and be nice and try to go out of my way to help so-and-so with whatever. But most of us don't come to work and say, I'm going to really try to piss somebody off today. We don't intentionally get into conflicts. So if you're going to focus your energy, focus it on the positives. Okay. So now we're really out of time and I'm going to have to stop. Here are some, just to show you what's in here, and you can go back and look at it. These are some ideas, some practical ideas for how you can think about it. Think about assertiveness and communication. Lists. I find lists to be not super helpful. But I mean, you can read them and see if there's anything in there that has value to you. So here's a list of references. Your Perfect Right is still the standard book as far as I know on assertiveness. It's in like its 300th edition, but it's really a good book, and this is about assertiveness. That's exactly what this book is about. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a book about teamwork that talks about respect. And guess what the first dysfunction is? Lack of trust. So it builds trust. It builds a healthy team like a pyramid, and the bottom of the pyramid is trust or lack of trust. So just what we all were talking about today. And then these crucial conversations, and then finally, videos. We've decided videos don't work very well in these webinars because they're hard for some of you to look at, but please look at these. They're good. Great. Thank you all so much for attending. I hope you got one or maybe 2 things that were helpful for you today, and if not, hopefully it's a good reminder. It's a great topic. So thanks for listening, and I hope you all have a good rest of your week.